This is Time Signatures with Jim Ervin, a podcast and radio program presented by the Capital Area Blues Society in Lansing, Michigan.
Driving up and down these Michigan roads, yeah.
And now, here he is, your host, Jim Ervin.
Baby, I'm home.
Well, hi there, everyone, and thank you so much, Parker. I'm Jim Ervin, and this is Time Signatures. My guest today hails from Sacramento, California, and he began his journey in the music business at the tender age of 10. Over the course of the past 20-plus years, he has established himself as a premier harmonica player, even securing an endorsement deal with Hohner. Blending a mix of Chicago and Texas-style blues with a bit of mid-century soul and funk, and even a bit of gospel in there, our guest has earned high praise from the likes of Little Charlie Beatty and the late legendary super harp himself, James Cotton. In 2024 and 2025, our guest placed as a semifinalist at the International Blues Challenge in Memphis, and in 2024, he became the youngest inductee into the Sacramento Blues Hall of Fame. Oh yeah, and he also has a hot new album out called Not Holding Back. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to welcome Georgia-born, Sacramento-based musician Kyle Rowland to Time Signatures. How's it going, man?
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me here. I do have to correct one thing. I wasn't born in Georgia. My father's family's all from Georgia, and Rick Estrin wrote a little review there, and on my record, one pager, and he included my Georgia roots. But I was born in Sacramento, born and raised in Sacramento. But I did spend a lot of my time as a kid going back to Georgia and visiting family in Augusta. So.
Very cool.
Have 200, 300 cousins in that area. So
wow, that's a big family, man.
Yeah, it's one of those places growing up before I was married that if you go to a bar, you know, you have to, if you're trying to pick up on a chick or something, you say, what's the name of your grandpa? What's your grandpa's name?
Right. So let's get right at it, Kyle, because I've got a lot to talk about here. You just released your first album via the Little Village Foundation.
Yeah.
You're far from a newcomer, however, so I would like to go back and have you tell me about your start in music.
Yeah, absolutely. I began, my father gave me a harmonica in my crib when I was a baby, and I started using that as like a pacifier and teething ring, and growing up with a harmonica. And then when I was about 10 years old, he took me to go see a gentleman by the name of Mick Martin, and Mick Martin is a local radio disc jockey. And my father wanted to take me to see a harmonica player and live, and so we went to go see Mick play, and I was playing in the audience. I was 10 years old at the time, and I was playing in the audience along with the band, which is nowadays. Now I look back, and if I hear a harmonica in the audience, I'm like, no, or a tambourine, But I was a kid, and so I guess I got away with it. And so I was playing harmonica in the audience, and Mick went to the microphone and said, "Who's ever playing the harmonica, stand up." And so I stood up, and I'm waving. And he says, "Whoever's playing the harmonica, please stand up." I was doing it again about 3 or 4 times. Finally, I stood on the chair, and I was like, "Hey, it's me." And then from there, he just called me. He says, "Get on up here, kid." And so I ended up joining him on stage, and then he says, "Well, we're playing over here later on tonight. Come play with us." And so I ended up following his band for about 6 years and joining the band. And then I started my own band when I was 16, and I've had my own band ever since.
Now, I want to step back just a half step, because I understand that you took some harp lessons from none other than Rick Estrin, who at the time was with Little Charlie and the Nightcats, correct?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
How did that come about, man?
Yeah, so I met him at a festival, and he pretty much said, "Well, yeah," I told my dad, like, you should bring Kyle over to my house. So, I think I was about 15, 16 or something like that. And and so we went over to his house, and I remember Rick opened his door. He lives here in Sacramento, and he had a harmonica, and he held the harmonica, and he says, this 4-inch piece of metal bought me this house. And then he says, "Come on in here." Then he showed me some stuff. And see, when I was a kid, when I was like 16, I was trying to like show off and play a bunch of notes. I was really trying to be like John Popper from Blues Traveler. and but I wasn't doing it very well. Like it was very poorly done. And then and so like then I remember when I first met Rick, he goes, "Hey man, you know, you got charisma, but you know what you're playing is not that cool." You know, and I'm like, oh, you know, he really humbled me when I was a teenager, and says,
Sure.
let me, you know. And then he just kind of took me under his wing from there, and he's one of my best friends, and he's shown me a lot of stuff, not just about the harmonica, but about singing and writing songs and how to phrase songs like a drum. You know, you put the words in the pocket of the groove of the song, and just kind of that's what makes a song. And so he's
Sure.
really become a big time mentor for me, and not only just music too, but like also in life. He's a life mentor. I can go to that guy with any problems, or say, "Hey man, I need your help. I need your advice on this." You know, and he always gives good advice.
You know, you've given me a new reason to come out to Sacramento. I have family in Elk Grove, and my sister and brother-in-law, nieces and nephews. My mom was out there till she passed a few years ago. So I got a new reason to come out. I'll have to look you and Rick up next time I get out that way. But in preparation for this interview, I read that you are, and I mentioned it in the opening, a Hohner endorsed musician. Now, that's not something that just falls into your lap. I mean, you have to have made an impression on somebody. How old were you when that happened?
Well, it kind of fell into my lap.
Yeah.
It's kind of a funny story, actually.
Okay.
You see, like I go to a harmonica convention every year. It's called SPA, the Society for the Preservation and Advancement of the Harmonica.
You just got back from there, right?
Yeah, it's in August.
And Deke was there?
Yeah, Deke. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
cool.
so I love Deke. He's so funny. And but yeah, so I went to SPA, and for years I've always like asked Rick and other people that I know are with Hohner, like, how do I get an endorsement? And they're like, they just gotta ask you. Like, they just have to see you, and the artist, the right guy, has to see you. And I'm like, oh man, all right. So then I'd go to SPA, and then, you know, of course, there's 300 harmonica players there, and 200 of them are trying to get an endorsement with Hohner. So I'm like, all right, I have no chance. You know, like, there's all these other harmonica players. I'm not going to be number 201 and saying, hey, can I be endorsed? So how this happened, and I think I'm definitely in history as one of the only people that have been endorsed through this way, is Hohner has a jam on Wednesday nights at SPA. And the artist relations guy, his name's Derek Frank at this time, I play guitar too. And I have my guitar at SPA. And he comes over to me and he says, Kyle, how much do you want to play guitar for the Hohner jam? And he says, I have a blank check. And he, like, you know, from Hohner, he's like, just name your price and I'll pay you. And I told him, I go, oh, Derek, I don't want any money from Hohner, you know, and I'll do the gig, you know. And he's like, well, no, like, what can I give you harmonicas? What do you want? Just come by the booth and tell me what you want. I go, no, you know, and I'm sitting there thinking. He goes, what can I do for you to play for 4 hours for us tonight? And I said, you know, Derek, I would love to have a deal. and he's like, done. And we went to the hotel printer, and he printed up the contract to be endorsed by Hohner, and I signed it. He signed it, and I said, Derek, I'll do your gig tonight. And then,
wow. How long ago was this?
Oh, about 3 years ago. Yeah, I was about
what
26,
a cool
27.
story, man.
Yeah, and then maybe 4 years ago now or something like that. But then Derek soon he left Hohner for another company, and now the guy that does it now is Jesse Hanks, and he has become one of my really close friends, and his whole family, beautiful people. And he didn't know that until the other day, like about a couple days ago. I actually told him that story, and he's like, "What?" So.
Well, I'm sure that they're satisfied with what they got. I mean, they certainly. I've heard you play, man. You're not a hack. Okay, you've got some skills.
Well, thank you. Yeah, no, it's a family, the Hohner family. It's pretty cool because we'll have like events, or at NAMM they'll have like a dinner or something, and we'll just, you know, and you know everybody, of course, on the Hohner team, and so you see each other and passing at different shows, different harmonica players, and you know, it becomes a family. It's
very
great.
Cool.
They take
all right,
care of
I
us.
have to ask you, man. At what point did you determine that you were going to pursue life as a musician, Kyle?
I'm still determining it. No, you know, I when I was a kid, I definitely like wanted to do it, as a passion. And then like during COVID, when all that stuff was going down, I realized that like musicians are just the court jester. Like we're just here to entertain the king and the queen. And so I was like, I need to get like a real degree. So I went back to school and I ended up getting a degree in political science, and then on now I'm getting my master's degree in divinity.
Wow.
But I've always want to be a full-time musician, but I definitely was awakened in COVID and like, oh yeah, I have to like, because I saw musicians that were my heroes out there doing construction jobs and doing,
Yeah.
odd job, delivering groceries. And I'm like, you are like the greatest guitar player in blues right now. And you were like barely scraping by. So it kind of gave me like, all right, like I want to be a musician, but I want something to fall back on too. And so I mean, like I'm just kind of riding the wave right now. I want to play as much as possible. I just got married, and so like my wife's very much supporting my dreams of being a musician. And yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see what the next thing has around the corner. But again, I'm also very, I'm okay with whatever happens. I'm not. I don't know. Like I'm not like. I guess I'm not like sitting here like forcing things to happen. I'm just kind of like and that's just me. I guess I'm just seeing where I'm being taken.
Yeah. I'll tell you, there's an episode that I just did a couple of weeks ago, 2 weeks ago yesterday, up in Bay City, with Larry McRae and his brother Steven and a couple of others. And one of the things Larry said in the interview was he wishes that he would have taken care of the business sooner in music, because if you don't, the music, the business will take care of you. And he regrets that he lost so many opportunities early in life because he didn't approach what he was doing as a business as often. And I think that's more important today than it ever has been, primarily because of the internet and whatnot. That's been a real tough challenge for all you guys out there. And that's one of the reasons that I believe in supporting, the musicians, and I buy the albums and I buy the CDs, and I'll do that. I've got over 500 blues albums over here. I got over 1,200 CDs because I believe in supporting the musician first. And I wish more people did that.
Well, thank you.
I need to turn the page here. In 2011, you released your first album called Hi Rowland. The album is now out of print, but I found one and I actually purchased it, and I should have it here next week. I'm excited to hear it.
Oh boy.
And I know you've come a long way since those days, but talk about that early foray into recording that first album. That must have been some kind of an experience for a young guy like you.
Yeah. I've actually recorded my first record when I was 16 here in Sacramento. It was produced by Mick Martin, and that one was called Messin With the Kid. And it was like a bunch of cover songs and stuff, and I had a bunch of local Sacramento musicians on it. And that was really cool because it was my first time in the studio. But then when I did Hi Rowland with Kyle Rowland, that was a Kid Anderson title, and it's, catchy. I was 18. I just graduated high school, and, I'm recording with my band, which at the time was Henry Oden on bass, Jeff Manyweather on drums, and Kevin Burton on the organ, who are affectionately called the Boss Talkers, and they played behind Joe Louis Walker for many years out here on the West Coast. And then on the guitar, I had Kenny Marchese, and him and I played together for about 15 years. And and it was like going to Greaseland for the first time. And if anybody's on this radio show understands like the name of Greaseland, it's like, wow, Greaseland, everything gets done at Greaseland,
Yeah.
Musselwhite, Ervin, all this stuff gets great recordings, and he's just, when you walk in, it's a duplex, it's his house, and he has like the piano in the kitchen. He has about 5 or 6 organs in the living room.
Wow.
He's punched a hole into the garage where he does the control room, and there's like a little glass window. It's like a full blown studio, but it's like a house, and then you walk in and it's like, whoa, this is where all this stuff is made, and yeah, and so like I remember like walking in there and just not knowing, like being greener than green, and like walking in like, what is all this, man? Wow. and just having the opportunity of recording with those heavy hitters in the band, and
Yeah.
just, you know, and the way Kid works as an engineer, just really, it helps me, you know. And definitely that record, there's a lot of things on that record that I look back on and like, oh man, you know, some songs I wrote and just like, oh, what was I thinking? You know, some lame songs on there. But all in all, I was really honored and blessed to be able to, you know, get my feet wet there at Greaseland. And then now with this new record, you know, I've done other stuff at Greaseland on other people's records and stuff, but doing my own record, I was like, okay, I'm more prepared now. You know, I have more help from Rick. Rick helped me on that last record too. He produced it, but I think I was just so young that I didn't have enough life experience yet. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know that you said that the guitar was something that you also play, but I want to ask you about your main sources of inspiration for the harp, aside from the aforementioned James Cotton. Can you talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, like when I grew up and I was hanging out with Mick Martin, he gave me, you know, all these Muddy CDs and Sonny Boy and Williamson in Europe, Sonny Boy 2, and I used to, you know, I was in 5th grade, and I used to take these CDs to school and listen to them on recess and try to play harmonica and try to practice and be like these guys. But when I was a little baby and child, when my father put the harmonica in my crib, I grew up listening. You know, he had cassettes. He had Muddy Waters cassette, and he had I think he had James Cotton on there, and he had another one with Paul Oscher, another one with like Jerry Portnoy. And I remember like hearing these harmonica players as like a little kid, and like not knowing their names, you know, like being 5, 6 years old, and just like being so impressed with how powerful the harmonica was, and you know, and how they can like make it talk, and like, and then later hearing like Sonny Boy Williamson and going like, what is going on? You know, like how can these guys make this noise out of this small instrument that I have in my hand? You know, and so it was like all these guys that just inspired me to play. And then I heard, you know, other more country style harmonica players like Lazy Lester and Sonny Boy One, and then you know, I tried to do that stuff, which is very, very difficult to do. It's not, you know, it's not as easy as playing like a Little Walter thing, which is not easy at all. But like that early country harmonica is so like melodic, and you know, and those guys, they just do it so well. And then, I mean, I grew up later on becoming friends with Oscher and Portnoy, and doing a lot of shows with me and Lester, Lazy Lester, up here near Sacramento. And they turned into like from inspiration to being like mentors and like really close friends. And I learned a lot more from them than, you know, just being immersed in it. And
Yes,
so those are some of my early harmonica players, you know, I look up to. But I mean, there's guys too that aren't really popular, like Papa Lightfoot. Hardly any. Papa Lightfoot is like very not well known harmonica player, and he's one of the best in my opinion. And so, yeah.
Speaking of James Cotton, because we mentioned him, I wanted to dig into that just a little bit. The story of your meeting with him and the time on and that time on the bandstand needs to be shared. I would love to have you share that story. Would you do that for me?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I was 13, and he had come through Sacramento, and so there was and Cotton was sitting in a chair, like a fold-out chair next to the stage, and there was a gentleman who came over to me and says, "Hey, I heard you played harmonica, kid. You know, can you play something?" And I normally didn't like play harmonica at somebody else's gig, you know, unless it was like the first time I ever went on stage. But I learned quickly that it was like not kosher to do that. So I told the guy, you know, I said, well, you know, yeah, I play harmonica. And then I just happened to kind of like see behind me that Cotton was sitting down. So I said, yes, I'll be happy to play harmonica for you, sir. And so I played the opening line to Mojo, got my mojo working, which was a song that Cotton did with Muddy. And, you know, and I guess Cotton, from what I understood, is someone else was watching. He kind of like looked up at me, and I didn't really like, you know, I didn't turn around or anything. I just was like so kind of embarrassed, and I was playing to this guy, and I didn't think anything of it. And at the end of Cotton's set, he closed out the show with Mojo, and he pointed down to me. He says, "Come on up here." And so
Wow.
I climbed on stage, and I'm playing harp with him, and then there's like a guy in the crowd, an African American gentleman, and he yells out. He goes, "Not bad for a white boy." And Cotton, he had just had like throat, Cotton had some like throat cancer and stuff
Yes,
like
sir.
that, and had some vocal cords removed and stuff. And so like he brought the band down to a whisper. And I mean, it was so quiet up there. And he looked at this guy in the crowd, and he says, "I ran away from home when I was 9 years old to live with Sonny Boy Williamson until I was 15. And he says, the blues isn't black, it isn't yellow, isn't purple, it's a feeling, and this boy's got it." And I was just, like, whoa. Being a 13-year-old kid, I didn't really understand the depth of what Cotton was saying until later on. But that was just like one of the happiest moments of my life is when he, and then the guy in the crowd was just like, "Oh yeah,"
Shut him right up, didn't it?
Yeah, and like Cotton was pretty much saying like, and which is so true. Like a lot of those guys from that time, man, they didn't really care about race when it came to music. I'm not saying everyone, but like a lot of those guys didn't. Like Lazy Lester, he grew up in Louisiana in the 30s, listening to country radio, listening to Jimmy Rogers, like the original Jimmy Rogers for the Singing Brakeman. And, and he says, when I was a little baby, when I was like a little kid, I used to listen to this on the radio, and this is in the middle of the Jim Crow era in Louisiana, and Lester used to go, he goes, "The blues ain't white." Lester used to say, "I play black boy blues and white boy blues." And he says, "It's all the same." He says pretty much country and blues is the same, just different shades. And so, yeah, when I first played with Cotton, that was, it was a magical moment for me. And then later on, he'd come through town with Hubert, and he brought me on stage and really took me in the green room, and I got to talk with Hubert and Cotton more and just be a fly on the wall, being a teenager, listening to those guys share stories. And then when I was like 19, Cotton came through with Matt Murphy, and then like Cotton and I really became close around that time. He decided to introduce me to Matt Murphy as a guitar player, and we're sitting backstage at Yoshi's, and like anybody knows me, like I don't really consider myself a guitar player. I can play guitar, but and then Cotton goes, "Hey Matt, my boy could play guitar. My boy could play guitar." And I look at Cotton like, "What are you doing right now? Like, are you, I'm like, yeah, I play a little bit." And Matt had his guitar, and he gave me his guitar. He said, "Show me something. Show me what you can do." And so I'm like doing some Lightning Hopkins thing, and Matt Murphy goes, "Do you use your pinky?" And I go, "Oh no." He goes, "You got to use your pinky, And so he says, "Let me show you." So he taught me a little thing on guitar. I use my pinky. And so try it. So he gave me back his guitar, and I'm trying to use my pinky, And then Matt Murphy looks over at Cotton and goes, "Your boy just don't got it." and Cotton fell out. He thought that was the funniest thing. And then he says, "Oh, but he plays harmonica. Well, get your harmonica out, boy." And so I brought out the harmonica, and then me and Matt starts playing a shuffle on the guitar, and me and Matt Murphy are playing backstage at Yoshi's, and Cotton's like, yeah, I told you, that's my son.
That's cool.
So
That's cool.
But Cotton and I, we became real close. I used to go and stay with him down at his house in Austin, him and his wonderful wife, and they would call me the kid they never had. And he would introduce me to people, as well, my son, and stuff like that. And that just made me feel so like, so good, because he's was one of my heroes, and just one of the, and like he was also one of the nicest people I've ever known. And and I still talk to his wife quite often.
That's cool.
She calls me and goes, "Hi, son," and "Hey, mom," and so she's lovely people, very lovely people. I'm just so honored to have been that close with a guy that made such an impact on.
What a beautiful basket of memories. That's wonderful. I mean, just all around with Lester and Hubert and Paul. a good friend of mine lives in the Bay City area. Fred Reif did some management work with Lester years ago as well, and he's got lots and lots of stories. I actually was fortunate enough to transfer a bunch of cassettes and reel-to-reel tapes that Fred had recorded of interviews with Lester from back in the day, and he allowed me to have a copy of them. Man, it's just so cool, man. He's got music that he's playing in the whole 9 yards, but it was really, really cool to hear all that stuff.
Well, see, Lester only lived about an hour from me and lived in Paradise, and I live in Sacramento.
Okay.
So, like, he would get me on gigs, like duo gigs and stuff, and we do some festivals around the area. But, like, what I really enjoyed doing is Lester would call me and be like, what are you doing? What are you doing tomorrow? Like, what are you doing today or whatever? No, nothing. He goes, come on up. And so I'd go up there, and, man, it would just be like me, Lester, and his wife, and me and Lester would be just drinking. I mean, just drinking our life away. A beer. And he'd cook up a big pot of, crawfish, or have a Georgia ham, which is a watermelon. And, he'd just have, he'd always have some type of food. And we just sit on this patio and just play music. Sometimes I bring up some of my friends that were blues musicians, and we just sit there all day and drink and just listen to music and play music and just hear stories and so some of those memories are were a lot better than the gigs that we did. I mean, the gigs we did were great, but like, then Lester would call me and we listened to the baseball game, the Giants game, for like 3 hours over the phone. And
wow.
like he'd like have it on the radio, and he'd be like,
yeah,
hey, let's watch this together, and like, and then hold on, Pence just hit a line drive, and he was one of my closest friends, and we hung out quite a lot. And
very cool.
Yeah, I miss that guy dearly.
Man. Well, Kyle, in each piece that I've found about you, there's mention of the fact that you've taught hundreds of children across the United States and Mexico and Cuba how to play the harmonica. Talk about that for a minute, would you please?
Yeah, so Honer has been so gracious to, so I supply me with these harmonicas for these kids. I've gone to Mexico and I've done shows down in Mexico. And I actually really started through my church. I went on like a mission trip to go help build a church in Mexico, in Mezcala, Mexico. And I reached out to the artist relations guy at Honer, and I'm like, hey, I'm going down here. We're going to be teaching some kids some vacation Bible school stuff, some arts and crafts. And that would be really cool if we could bring down some harmonicas and give these kids in these rural areas harmonicas. And Jesse was on top of it. Yeah, absolutely. And so like he sent me, I think that he sent me like 80. I think I brought 80 or 100 harmonicas down to Mexico the first time. And then I passed them all out to the kids. Oh, no, it was like 50. It was 50 the first time. It was like 40 or 50. And so I passed them out to all the kids. And then I went up there and I taught about 50 kids there in Mexico how to play harmonica. And of course, I tied it to like a biblical lesson of like, God gives us breath, and we, use that breath to exhale of love, and through the harmonica, and I kind of connected it to in the moment. I was like, how do I turn this into like a Bible lesson? And so, and then I went to Mexico again on like a music trip down in Mazatlan, and I asked Honer, I was like, can you guys give me like 100 harmonicas? And I was like kind of nervous, and they're like, yeah, like it was like immediate, like yes. So I went down there and I met with the Cultura people of Mazatlan who were like in charge of the city events, just like it's like a city event planning committee, and they put like this whole video out. They reached out to the community, and like I think like 120 kids came out, and I only had like 100 harmonicas. So I was like, oh man! But I ended up passing out all these harmonicas at this old battle fort overlooking the ocean. I forgot the name of it, but and so like it was like almost like a small arena, and so like I gave them all these harmonicas, and I taught them how to translator, and I was teaching them how to play. And that wasn't that was with music, so I didn't really obviously connect it to the Bible or anything, because I didn't want to I didn't want to. I know the government down there can be kind of different about stuff like that. And so like I just taught them how to play harmonica, and I taught them how to make a train sound, and I gave them all harmonicas, of course. And then I went to Cuba a couple times, and the first time I brought down 100 harmonicas, passed them out in Cuba, and that was cool. And those kids don't even, they don't even know that they don't even see stuff like that. And then I just got back from Cuba in November, and I brought down 80.
Wow.
So I gave some down there, and it's just cool, like watching these kids, like, play the harmonica, which is one of my, obviously I love the harmonica. It's my favorite instrument. And, but just like hoping that these are the next generation of harmonica players, that like, not necessarily blues, but like, what if they, take it somewhere else or something, and I just,
Sure.
I'm just so grateful for that Honer has graciously supplied that. And I'm going to Mexico again in March, and I think I have like maybe 60 or 70 more harmonicas I'm going to bring down there. So
nice. I don't know if you had a chance to meet Billy Branch by chance.
I haven't. We've crossed paths and like two ships passing the night. I've never talked to him or met him.
The man has spent so far 46 years in the Blues in the School program, and he has touched, I think he said he would estimate over the last 46 plus years, 1 million or more children along the way.
Wow.
And he does a 2-week residency, when he goes, there's, he's done stuff outside of the U.S., inside the U.S., really just a wonderful individual to talk to. But let's talk about you. The new album is called Not Holding Back. It's co-produced by Rick Estrin, your early mentor, and Kid Anderson, and it's out on Jim Pugh's Little Village Foundation label. Talk about that powerful team backing you for a minute, and let's hear about the writing and recording process a bit as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a wonderful, wonderful group of guys and gals and stuff that are part of it, and just, when I came up with a song or something like that, I was singing a song, and Rick lives about 10 minutes from me, and I go over and Rick, what do you think of this song? And he just looks at it and just like shakes his head. You're like, no, I'm like, no, man, I thought this was a masterpiece. And so that's what that's why I love having Rick on my team, and backing me, because he's not afraid to tell me, what's sounds good and what doesn't. He's right there to offer criticism as much as I don't, even sometimes I'm like, well, I don't agree, but I'm like, but Rick says so it's got to be true. The same thing with Kid. Like Kid and I, there was a song that I wrote, and Kid was like, you should cut off the last verse, and it was a very important song, and I was like, man, Kid, I don't know, and like I fought with him like tooth and nail, and then like I was like, all right, we're just going to cut the song. Like, we're done. I'm not doing this song. I was really frustrated because it was a song that was like meant more to me than any of the other songs there. It's the, and so like, I then like him and I were just like butting heads on this one song. And then like I slept on it, and the next day I was like, oh yeah, he's right. Like that part doesn't need to be said. Like it's already implied in the song, like things like that. And so I text him, I go, yep, you're right. I was like, I thought about it, and that's how it mostly went. Is those guys, they offer criticism and they critique me, and I love it because I'm maybe in the moment I'm just like, but those guys, I have to, I respect them. I understand they've been here a lot longer than me, and they know what gets over, and
sure,
I'm they've really helped me. There's a few songs that like I took to Rick, and Rick's like, yeah, like let's work with this. Let's change this word. Let's do this. Hey, what do you think about adding this word onto it? And so there's a few songs I give him credit to, and same with Kid. He did that on a couple songs I give him credit to on the record and stuff, and just being part of that, and then being in the studio, thinking I have this song in my head, and then like having the band just start playing it, and it's like, this is not what I was thinking. But wow, this is way cooler than I was thinking. And just letting it go.
Which is better than the other way.
yeah. And then so there's just it's so cool to be able to work with these fantastic musicians that are on the record. And then Anson, and like, Kid going like, oh, Anson's coming through to record with Hummel here, and Anson and I are old buddies, and really, really close friends, and then Anson ends up on the record, and I'm like, oh, how did that happen? So.
Nice. How about your relationship with Jim Pugh and Little Village? I got to hear a little bit about that as well, because he's like touching music everywhere these days, isn't he?
Yeah. He's like, I've known him for a while, obviously out in California, but he saw me play at the International Blues Challenge in 2004 when I went there as a solo artist, and he had mentioned to Rick, not 2004, 2024. Did I say 2024? Sorry, 2024 is as a solo artist. And so Jim mentioned to Rick, like, man, I'd love to, do something with him. And then a year gone by, and then I brought my own band out there and did the International Blues Challenge, and Jim saw my band then. And then I got the call from Jim, and he says, hey, I would love to do a record with you on Little Village if you're interested. And I said, let me think about it, yes. And so, yeah, and Jim has just been a force and really bringing out musicians that don't get the chance to be heard.
Yes.
And it's a beautiful thing. There's people on Little Village that I'm like, I've never heard this before. Let's check it out. And we went on the blues cruise, and I was with the Greaseland All-Stars, and I just was like thanking everybody on stage. And I said, I got, my brother Kid, I got my, Papa Rick here, my pops Rick, and then I look over at Jim. And then we got Grandpa Jim on the organ, and he just like, hey, and everybody loved it. And so I was talking to him a couple days ago. I go, okay, Gramps, and he goes, ha, yeah. We have a good relationship. He's a sweetheart of a guy, and he knows what he's talking about. And he just added so much to the record too, on clavinet, on organ, on piano. He's all around great dude.
Put in a good word for me. I've been trying to get him on the show. I don't know if he does he tend to shy away from the limelight a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay, that explains it, and not in a negative way. Not in a negative way. But I'm hoping to get him on because I would love to talk to him about all these musicians that he's helped over especially the last 3 or 4 years. I've seen a ton come out of there, and it's like every time I turn around, I see another one being put out by Little Village, and I think it's a wonderful thing that he's doing. But I'd like to talk.
He definitely.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, he told me this on the boat. He's like, I don't want it to be like Jim Pugh's Little Village. I want it to be a Little Village, and everybody focusing on the artist. So he's just very like, yeah. And he's like, I try to stay. He's like, I don't really like it when they say, Jim Pugh with Little Village. I want them to say Little Village. He's like, I want my name removed. Like I want to be a part of it, but I don't want my name. I go, wow, it's pretty commendable. So.
No, it is. It really is. And in a world where it would be very easy for him to go, yep, that's me. I'm the guy, yada, yada.
Yeah.
It's nice to know that there's people out there that are genuinely humble, good, humble people. Now, I didn't want to not talk about your band because I see you have a band as well. So let's talk about them for a minute.
Yeah, so I started my band when I was 16, and that was with, Kevin Burton and like I said, with the last record, Joe Louis Walker and Jeff Miniweather and Kenny Marchese. And so I played with those guys for quite some time. Marchese was the one that stayed with me for 15 years. The other guys have other things to do, like probably play the Grammys and stuff. And here's a little kid that gets to play with these guys. But then I recently, Marchese kind of retired from playing music. He just kind of said, I'm kind of tired, and he got married recently. And so now I have in the band Justin McCarthy on the guitar. He's a fabulous guitar player out of San Francisco. Okay. And then I have Mike Phillips on the bass, who was with Charlie Musselwhite for years, and he lives here in Sacramento, fabulous bass player. And I have this young kid on the drums by the name of Miles Silvera, and Miles grew up in the Bay Area, and he lives here in Sacramento now, and he's a very Fred Belo style drummer, which is one of my favorites. It's just that 50s floating butterfly shuffle, and he really adds a lot to the band too. And so that's the band. And myself play harmonica and sing, and we're called Rowland and Tumblin' because my last name's Rowland.
Yeah.
And Tumblin', and and so we do a lot of blues, of course, and that's our main thing. But I mix in some soul. I'm a big fan of 60s soul, James Carr, and
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
just, a lot of stuff like that. We do some of that, and then we do some funk stuff too, but like funk from the '60s and maybe early '70s, and then I put like my own words on it or something. But I'm really enjoy that kind of stuff too.
And what is this live on tape? Is this an album that you and the band put out?
Yeah, so this was a band that I had about 4 or 5 years ago, actually. And Live on Tape was a show that we did in Sacramento, and I have like a reel-to-reel machine, an old '60s Roberts reel-to-reel machine, and I brought it to the club, and
wow,
I plugged in 2 microphones. One of the VU meters was broken, so I'm like, I don't know what levels I'm getting, and I just kind of like turned up the mics and put them in the thing in the club, and recorded the whole show. And I'm like thinking, it's not going to turn out. And then I happened to listen to the tape afterwards and the whole thing, and I go, whoa, there's some stuff on here that will work. I got the idea from listening to a T-Birds bootleg that I don't think I'm supposed to have, that I found somewhere underneath the bridge of those guys. Yeah. Of those guys playing like in like the mid '70s somewhere in Seattle, and it was like somebody brought in a tape recorder, and so you just hear this hiss and like the whine of the tape, but the band sounds so full, and like you hear the crowd, and it's like it's not technically the greatest recording, technical wise, but in my opinion, is like the greatest recording I've ever heard. And so I was like, I want to do a record like that, and this Live on Tape, which is this right here, and that's the tape box that I actually recorded on.
Nice.
And and so this is, I was really happy with this record because I all I did was I just pushed play and hope for the best, and it came out with some good tunes, and I'm still happy with that record, and I released it myself. There's no like record label or nothing like that, and I didn't really mix and master it. I think I mastered a little bit of it, but it didn't really need it. It's just tape, and you can just hear the crowd, and it's just like that T-Bird CD I was talking about. It's just so full, and I'm really happy with the recording style. But like people that are like in the studio business would take one listen to that, and they go like, "You can't even, this is not clean." I'm like, yeah, it's great, right?
That's the allure of bootleg. Trust me, Well, Kyle, from the looks of things, you have some dates coming up. Among them, you recently appeared at Biscuits and Blues in San Francisco with my good friend Earl Thomas. And what else is happening? What else is going on for you in the near future?
Yeah, I'm actually doing that tonight. I'll be at Biscuits with Earl tonight. And I play at the Saloon in San Francisco every first Sunday of the month. If you know the Saloon, it's a place hasn't changed since 1861. It's pretty much the same thing. Bartender's probably the same bartender. She's awesome. But and so I play there every first Sunday of the month from 9:30 to 1:30, and it's a long gig, but it's a great gig. Then I have some stuff coming up. I'm playing down in La Paz, Mexico, coming up in February, and then I'll be doing some stuff in Mexico City too around that time. Then I'll be coming back home, and then I know we're doing a Little Charlie Beatty Memorial fundraiser. We do it every March or so, and that's going to be on the 12th, and Anson's going to be on that, and we're going to be doing that in Sacramento. It's to raise money for the Little Charlie Scholarship Fund at Sac State. And then 2 days later, I go to Mazatlan for a couple weeks. And so I'm really looking forward to this year, and I'm hoping to get some more shows out of this record. And that's the problem, is like I don't really know a lot of people out there on the East Coast or in the Midwest as much. And so, I'm hoping little things like this, or might, maybe I can get like a club gig out of it or something, and then just promote the CD. I really want to do some stuff coming up with the CD.
Well, you answered my question, because I was wondering if there were any travel plans for Central U.S. or East Coast or anything like that. You trust me, you'll get some exposure from this with a couple of people that may be able to help you out. You never know. I know there's some fest organizers that listen on a regular basis or watch on a regular basis, but we'll definitely put your name out there for anybody locally that's looking for a good act, for sure. Well, Kyle, where can we send folks to learn more about you, maybe buy some music or merch, or, as we just said, book you for a gig?
Yeah, I have a website. It's KyleRowlandBlues.com. That's ROWLAND blues.com. And yeah, and you could see my upcoming shows and events and stuff on there. And so that's one place. Also, when I get in the CDs and the record, I'm going to be able to figure out how to sell. I'm really like, when it comes to that kind of stuff, I feel like I'm like a 98-year-old man in a 32-year-old body. Like, I do not know I'm really bad when it comes to computers. And apparently waking up on time for interviews. But yeah, so you can buy my record online when it comes out that way. But also, I'm on Instagram under the same thing, Kyle Rowland Blues. Facebook is Kyle Rowland. Yeah, and that's pretty much the best ways to reach me. And you can find my email all over that stuff and send me an email, which is just my name with a dot in the middle at Yahoo. I try to make everything as simple and easy as possible to contact me.
Sure.
And
sure.
So yeah.
Well,
I appreciate
Kyle
you
Rowland,
having me here, man.
I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed our chat today, man. I'm truly excited to see what comes next for you and for your future endeavors. And do me a favor, if you would, please. Anytime you need a microphone to promote an album, a tour, or anything else, reach out to me. We've got a microphone for you. And do me a favor as well, if you would. Please give Earl all my best this evening. And tell Mary Lou that I said hi. She knows me as Jimmy, but I shouldn't even say that on the show because now people are going to tease me about it. But she's known me for a very, very long time. I think it was like 5 or 6 when I met her. But hang around. Let me tie the ribbons on here, and I'll wrap up with you in just a moment.
Thanks again for having me.
That's my pleasure. My pleasure. As we come to a close on this edition of Time Signatures, I'd like to tell you about the Capital Area Blues Society, based right here in Lansing, Michigan. CABS began its run in the fall of 1994, and they've built a strong presence in central Michigan, offering an annual blues brawl where the band and solo/duo winners are sent to Memphis to compete in the annual International Blues Challenge on Beale Street in Memphis. There's a lot more. We also hold an annual Breaking Bread with the Blues program, offering a day of blues music and a chance to raise funds for the Greater Lansing Food Bank right here in Lansing, Michigan. Oh, and by the way, CABS also presents this program, for which I am eternally grateful. As with all nonprofits, the Capital Area Blues Society is always looking for donations, so please consider making a tax-deductible donation to CABS today. Visit capitalareablues.org, and you can make your donation in any amount, and they'll appreciate it. And as always, thank you for your consideration. And that wraps up this edition of Time Signatures. Once again, my thanks to our guest, Kyle Rowland, but also to you, for without you, none of this would be possible. Jim Ervin reminding you, keeping the blues alive is everyone's responsibility, but preserving the history of the blues, one story at a time, that's my mission. Until next time, so long, everybody.
This has been Time Signatures with Jim Ervin, presented by the Capital Area Blues Society in Lansing, Michigan. For more information on CABS, visit capitalareablues.org. You can find this episode and past episodes at lcconnect.org. The Time Signatures theme song, Michigan Roads, is used by permission and was written by Root Doctor, featuring Freddie Cunningham.
You know I'm trying, baby, driving up and down these Michigan roads, yeah.
Until next time, keep on keeping the blues alive.